KAKU 88.5 FM.
Okay, here we go.
Kahului, Maui. Quiet, please. The voice of Maui.
The Neutral Zone, with me, Jason Schwartz, would like to thank Maui Arts and Music Association, Treemakers Foundation of Maui, for their support. Since 1991, with hundreds of television shows and their MauiArtsandMusic.com website, they have championed self-sustainability on Maui. The Neutral Zone is heard live Mondays at 11 a.m. and replayed Saturday at 7 a.m. on KAKU 88.5 FM, the voice of Maui. Good morning, everyone. We are here, and we are introducing our show to you. Well, I don't hear the sound. There it is. Welcome to the Neutral Zone. It's Monday. I have a terrific guest today. Stay tuned and tell your friends. Now, the song that would have been here normally, Sympathy for the Devil, isn't here. We're going to have to reprogram the phone. Some of you may recall that my car was broken into, and that process got me kind of motivated to look into things at a closer level, at what's happening here. Looking at housing, looking at things on the street. I went to a meeting a couple of weeks ago. Tasha Kama, councilwoman, asked me to come. And there at this meeting, there were a few council people and the mayor, and there were people from different agencies. And there was someone that stood out from the group. He was eloquent. Do you think of yourself as eloquent?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Not what my wife says, but okay.
LAWRENCE KAUHA'AHA'A, well, it's easy for you to say, is running a program. Why don't you start by giving us in a nutshell what you're doing?
So the program, well, let me start off by saying I'm a 25-year veteran of the Maui Police Department. I retired about 8 years ago. And when I retired, I thought I was retiring for good. I didn't think I was going to be working or doing anything ever again. I coach at Lahaina Luna High School.
Never do anything
No,
again.
I didn't think I was going to do. I coach at Lahaina Luna High School. I'm the strength and conditioning coach for the boys JV and varsity football. I also do girls basketball and boys basketball and a couple other sports. I work with kids from 6th through 12th grade there in Lahaina. I also run a youth outreach group in Wailuku called the Queen Emma Athletic Club, and I have kids there from 7 to 19 years old. And, was happy just doing that. And that program is right there at the Good Shepherd Church in Wailuku. And a part of that program, we also have the Ohana Kitchen, where we feed the homeless over there once a week. And I mentioned my wife earlier, but she's also a clinical therapist, and she works at with the mentally ill. And a couple of programs that were kind of near and dear to me, the one was Ohana Kitchen, and Mental Health Kokua that works with the mentally ill were kind of coming to attack because of the homeless problem in Wailuku about 5 or 6 years ago. And people are saying that because they're feeding the homeless in Wailuku, and because of the mental health kokua, there's all these homeless. That's what they attributed the homeless problem in Wailuku to. And I'm like, well, a lot of those programs are there in response to there being a homeless issue. It's not like feeding pigeons. You're trying to attract them, so you bring in these programs. They're there because you're having these issues and they're trying to work with them. So these programs are assets. They're not there to hurt. They're actually there to help. And so I decided to speak up one day, and Erin Wade from the county planning department, and she's a small town planner there. She had been asking me to come back and work with the county and help with these issues. She finally convinced me to step in and to work with her for a little bit. So there was a program. It's called Clean and Safe, and that's what they're calling my program. It's kind of a off-the-shelf generic name for the program. I don't really care for that name. In fact, that's the reason I got involved, because I was supposed to help them select a vendor for this Clean and Safe. Basically, it's a security guard group with a cleaning element, somebody who's going to actually provide security, private security, and they would clean Wailuku town. And I'm like, well, that's not going to work. One, because a security guard doesn't have any authority in Wailuku. Only the police would. And then cleaning it, you can get anybody to clean a town. But I thought that if you could get the people that, the mentally ill, the homeless people, and get them back to work. Instead of excluding people, you wanted to include them in the process of cleaning it. And, Wailuku is an old town. In the old days, people swept the town. They didn't get out blowers and make a big ruckus. They sat out there and they swept, and people would say good morning and hello. And I felt like that's the way it should be done. So me and my big mouth ended up getting this contract. And so instead of having security guards, I teamed with a group of people that act more like outreach workers. So when we came across people, for example, a homeless person, instead of going up to them and saying, hey, you got to get out of here, move on, because you're just displacing the problem, asking them, hey, when's the last time you had a hot meal? Using the church as a resource, because I can now go up to them with their cup of cold water and hand out, food, first aid, clothing, and then walk them over to Mental Health Kokua and get them a hot meal there. They can get a shower. They can get reunited with their case managers or social workers. Receive if they have any kind of social agencies or benefits, they can get hooked up with it there. And so that's how the program started, and that's how I got involved in it.
I see. So Wailuku Ambassadors is a name that identifies a program to clean up Wailuku and be hands-on with people that otherwise were just sitting there and taking up space. Now you're putting them to work in a way of cleaning up the place, get them cleaned up at the same time. Do you get a lot of resistance from people that don't trust these services? I've had a lot of people in the mental health, or not mental, in the homeless community, just simply don't trust these programs.
In the beginning, so from my understanding, a lot of people that are, if you have a mental illness, a lot of the medications don't feel good. Medications dull your senses. They make them feel sleepy. They feel removed. So a lot of them don't want to go in because they don't want to receive the medications. But a lot of times the behavior is going to get them arrested. Also, a lot of times they self-medicate with alcohol, drugs, and that behavior also is going to get them arrested. So we try to get them to go in and work with somebody and have some kind of modification to their medication so that they can get feeling better, get feeling normal. I 100% believe the longer somebody is out with a mental illness that's not being treated, that it actually causes more long-term harm to them. If they're self-medicating, especially with harsh drugs like methamphetamines, or even with alcohol, it's actually causing even more harm. So the sooner we get them off the streets and into a program, the better. Even if it means, and this is me from years of being a police officer, even if it means getting you arrested. Because arrest will mean court-ordered mental health assessment, court-ordered drug treatment. But either way, even if it takes 2 or 3 or 4 times somebody getting arrested, it's getting them that help, or even getting them. A lot of people with mental illnesses say that when they had to hit rock bottom. It's getting them there to that rock bottom so that they will voluntarily say, okay, I need help. I need to go see somebody. I need to get medicated, and I need to get get off the streets. And so that's how our program works.
Well, I've unfortunately had an experience where someone close to me lost their house and became homeless, a woman. And they had problem with the difference in being a female, that these places of reception were very hard to her to be at because of the others that would be hitting on her and making her uncomfortable and that kind of stuff. Is there any kind of gentle way into a safe zone to be able to let some of the people, I understand you have a personable attitude and you're very approachable, But some people, might be stand up. Is there any kind of middle ground where, like I know that the across from Foodland in Kahului, there's a church there that became a refuge at night. I forgot the name offhand.
The Family Life Center.
The Family Life Center. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But there used to be a place for men and a place for women. There used to be Salvation Army, a place for men and a place for women. Then there was the formal shelter in Wailuku Hale. I can't even remember that. It's Ikeola?
Kaha'iakeola.
Kaha'iakeola, which again is very structured and again may restrict people that had drug or alcohol issues because they don't want to be too. Are there any kind of safe middle grounds that are set up in your domain? I want to say in where you're working.
Not really. Ultimately, you're gonna have to have some structure. I know people have mentioned, even that night, somebody mentioned, like for instance, having a place where people could park their car, and and knowing that there could be some drug use, there could be alcohol use. Unfortunately, and let's say the county created this zone. Now, if you're the county, you become liable for it. So if you look at at Safeway, there was a car accident about a month ago where somebody drove in and they died. Now, if you created that zone, you're not liable for that accident. And if he killed somebody else, you're also liable for that. If it was alcohol or drug related, that one I understood was a medical condition. But let's say it was alcohol or drug related, you're liable. Because how do you ensure that the person wasn't, on alcohol or drugs? Then you have to, most vehicles are required to have insurance. How do you ensure that they were safe, that they had insurance? So it's hard to not have rules and just have, like you said, middle ground type things. And that's like they talk about housing first. They have this concept. It's called housing first.
Yeah.
They try to have it here, but it takes intensive treatment that goes along with the housing. Because a lot of these folks, if you gave them a house, a shoebox full of $100 bills, they'd be homeless within a week if you don't have some kind of intensive treatment that goes along with it.
I've heard stories where they've given someone that's homeless a place and it becomes a new drug hale.
Yeah.
And it becomes the center of a problem. I understand that. I just am always thinking that liability or not, they can check people on the way in if they want. People that don't have a lot of money can also get their insurance paid for by the state. So there are some answers for a lot of these people.
You could look at that, and again, how much are you willing to spend on that? Especially when it comes to vehicles. If they're using the vehicle to go to work, they got a job they're going to, that might be something to consider. If they're using the car to live in, maybe that's something to consider. But the other thing is now, especially when it comes to like drug use, and you're talking about like methamphetamines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now, a car belongs to a person. If they're living in it, or even if they're not living in it, it's their personal property. It's almost like their home. It's a domicile. So if you're going to create these zones, you're going to want to have a drug-free, alcohol-free zone, right? I would think. Now, the only way to ensure that is you would have to search the vehicles. Well, you can't search the vehicles because it's private property. You'd actually have to have a search warrant to search the vehicle.
So what do you do with people that don't cooperate? It seems like on the way in, that becomes a requirement.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of these, it's good thoughts. If everybody were to cooperate and say, I want this, I need help. I'm willing to, be involved in your drug-free zone. Go ahead, search my vehicle. That would be fine. But
that's not what you often find.
That's not what you often find. And then again, the liability becomes too great for the county, which is us. The ones that are going to work and paying taxes. We're the ones ultimately going to be footing the bill when somebody gets hurt or killed.
When I was at that meeting where I heard where people have at their businesses homeless either in the front portion or right next door becomes an issue, don't we almost have to create a zone that's safe to get them to be off the street? I know they've tried this in different areas.
And that's what we were looking at. Like, so in Wailuku town, and that's what was really fortunate. That's why I said that, like, mental health kokua there, it's an asset to you. You have a place there where they have bed space. They have a meeting room. They have a place where they get a hot meal. They can take a shower. They have washing machines. They can wash their clothes. They have a courtyard in the back where there's, at any given time, you'll have 15 or 20 people sitting there. They can't drink. They can't use drugs, but, they'll have cigarettes. They'll smoke cigarettes, whatever. But a lot of them are just hanging out there and just talking story. They're just having, a good time and talking story and hanging out.
Does that ever develop into a progression of work or something they can do to be responsible and feel good about themselves?
Some of them, they end up coming to work for us. They go work at other places. Some of them just need that time to vent and work with, to have somebody to talk to. But if they weren't there doing that, they'd be on the streets out in Wailuku. And unfortunately, people would have their opinions and their thoughts, and they would look down on them. It's like, well, what are you guys doing there? Get a job, you bum, whatever. A lot of these guys couldn't work even if they wanted to because of their mental condition. But just having their own space and their own space and their own place to be is huge.
Like a daytime refuge.
Yeah, and it really is. And then. But
at night, there's beds available.
They have beds available there. A lot of these guys have their own places. They because of the program there, they can apply for HUD housing. They have Section 8 housing where they actually have a place to go. But because of that place there, they meet with their mental health providers. They get that intensive care right there.
Well, that's good that there are services available.
And that's what we're looking at. And that's what I was going to segue to. In Kahului, that's what we're looking at.
Also with showers and beds and
where all
is there any requirement? Let's say you're there for 3 weeks. I mean, are they moved into programs from there?
The idea is that they eventually will transition into more permanent housing. Once they're stabilized with their medications, and they're stabilized, and they can now transfer into. Sometimes they're moved into like a group home, or then from the group home they move into like HUD housing. And then they can get their own places to live. And they go to work.
When you say medications, I'm always thinking, I remember, someone, they get medication to calm down because of the anxiety of their situation.
Yeah.
That's considered mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm no professional.
No, I understand.
Yeah, so I wouldn't.
As a police officer, I'm sure you dealt with all kinds of things. I would like to see an environment where when I see a police officer, I think of them as a peace officer, where they're there, and I know they're there to make things better and more calm, where because of your experience out there on every single call, you never know. Seriously, I'm sure you know. You don't know who's got what out there. It's become an uncomfortable environment just to speak to a police officer as a non-police. So I would like to somehow find a way to get rid of that. Get the police to be more involved even on things like this, to them to be understood better as human beings.
Yeah. And unfortunately, and that's the second half of our program. And that's why I don't like that clean and safe, like I said, off-the-shelf description of that program. So our second half of our program is we're more like safety consultants. So what the county basically bought was a safety consultant for each of the businesses in Wailuku, where we have an education portion, and after the educational portion, we actually go and help people walk through the process of calling the police. As most people know, the police are short 40 to 50 police officers at any given time. And you're always looking at 10 or 15 people retiring every year. And, the classes are getting smaller and smaller. So as a resource, the officers, when you're calling police officers, they're generally reactive. So, what you're describing now, when the officers come, it's usually a situation that's kind of out of control. And that's why it's always totally reactionary, and it's never, it's them trying to gain control of a situation. It's not, being proactive as much anymore.
Yeah.
And that's where, like for us, we're now, my program, I can be more like, hey, when's the last time you had something to eat? Or, hey, who's your case manager? And trying to be more sympathetic with them and trying to work with them and getting them back into the program or back into somewhere instead of just calling the police, getting them arrested or moved on. And a lot of it has to do with that the police are just going from call to call. And, and that's where our program is trying to help people utilize that resource, the police, so that, you're not just calling and they're coming and, you're not making the most of that call.
I don't know how many years ago, I ran into a guy who was in the mental health profession and someone who was bridging homeless. And they talked about this CIT program, that there was a mandate. I don't know if the word mandate's right. The federal government said, hey, Maui police, you're getting a little rough out there. We need you to go through training. And there was training for a while, and this guy moved to the Big Island, Robert Calasano. I wondered if the police are also aware of this middle ground. Is there ever, I'd like to see meetings where public and police somehow have an opportunity to mix more. I often think of it like when I go to a meeting and I don't see any Hawaiians. What's the deal here? How come we're not integrating our cultures? I think the same thing about the public and the law enforcement somehow getting to know each other on a different letter so that it isn't so reactionary, so that people can feel like they're calling a peace officer, but that they can not have to all spread in 50 directions because they're afraid of the police. And,
of course that would be, that would be an idea, and that's something you would take up with, Chief Faumu. And I don't see why he wouldn't make that happen.
Well, this was ongoing. I just wondered, when this guy moved to the Big Island, that program sort of went away, and I always wonder, where things get started. I can talk to the chief.
Yeah, it's one of those things, generally things like that need a moderator, somebody to facilitate it and, carry that conversation and create that network. And, making it meaningful and having those conversations so that making the most of that time when you have the officers there in the community and, trying to bridge that gap, but also making it meaningful so that at the end of the day, there's some achievements that everybody can kind of hang a hat on.
Well, in some ways, that's why I've got this show, because I want to talk about things sometimes are controversial, but want to know the reasons why and how we can break down those barriers to on a national level. We're being polarized. Here locally, we could be a great example and live in a different kind of an environment. That's what I just am constantly trying to see. I feel, when I had my issue, mostly I was told, could you step back? I'm feeling I'm just gotten stolen from. I was not attacking the police, but so suddenly I felt distant, and I just really would like to think that officers, again, we have so much time. Is it time for me to go to a commercial? Let me see. We don't have commercials here. We got a few minutes.
Okay.
But I just keep bringing that up because...
Well, I was going to shift gears, and as you can tell, I can go on and on and on. And the next part was going to be a little lengthy, too. So
why don't we wait on that, and maybe we'll go early. And any of you out there, I want you to know that if you want to listen to this show again, go to MauiNeutralZone.com. It's right now on Facebook Live. It's at KAKU on Facebook. You can find it. You can find it on YouTube later. At MauiNeutralZone.com, I have all our shows. I think of it as a library of interviews, of resources of some of the great people who have been on. Lawrence, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Let me look for the number.
I saw your email address. Was that intended to be given out or no?
No, let me give you my other one. I have another email address to give.
Okay.
But let me get you after the break.
That's all right. I just think it's important because you are so approachable, and because of your personal history as being a police officer, I think that's really an important thing, that people feel comfortable. There are a lot. I got to think about all the homeless people that I've met. that had they met someone that approached them with the kind of, you have a very comfortable attitude. You don't seem like you're, maybe you can tell me when you're on calls as a police officer, you're in a different stance, right?
Yeah, well, when I was an officer, it was, my whole career was basically a community liaison at some point or another. And a lot of it had to do, even when I was doing, like, investigating crimes, it's about people. It's about gathering information. The more you knew, the more people you knew, the easier it was to solve things. And I think that was the most important part. And yeah, once it was time to do the job, you could be rough around the edges too. But we wore many hats. Let's put it that way.
We're going to take a break, and we'll come back, and we'll let you know how to get in touch with Lawrence Kauha'aha'a, who is working in a program in Wailuku. Well, I don't want to call it clean.
The company's name is actually Ho'omaikai Services.
I see.
And Ho'omaikai means to do the right thing. To do the right thing.
Well, we'll be back in just a bit. Please enjoy these breaks. The Neutral Zone with me, Jason Schwartz, would like to sincerely thank David Bryan for his support. David was founder and head of school at New Road School in Santa Monica, California, and is the board chair at the Ojai Foundation and on the board for Brave New Films. The Neutral Zone is heard live Mondays at 11 a.m. here on KAKU 88.5 FM, the voice of Maui, and again on Saturdays at 7 a.m., as well as on TV and on MauiNeutralZone.com.
Want to host your own radio talk show? You can. Once every month, KAKU 88.5 FM offers an introduction to radio class at Akaku Plaza at 333 Dairy Road in Kahului. This introduction to radio will get your feet wet and show you what you need to do to get started. Interested? Call us at 871-5554 for more information and registration.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me. I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Aloha, this is Bill Best inviting you to join me for my show on KAKU 88.5 FM. It's Off the Record, and I have a chance to speak with some of the most interesting people on and off the island. So be sure to listen in every Tuesday and Thursday from 11 until noon here on KAKU, the voice of Maui, 88.5 FM.
Hi, I'm Jason Schwartz, host of The Neutral Zone. KAKU is a listener-supported station. This means that all of the great programs you hear, like mine, are sponsored by you as well as our underwriters. If you would like to help keep the voice of Maui talking loud and clear, go to kakufm.org/donate today and give. And don't miss The Neutral Zone Mondays at 11 a.m. on 88.5 FM, the voice of Maui. We are back. This is The Neutral Zone. I'm Jason Schwartz here with Lawrence Kauha'aha'a, and we are talking about life. Life on a very basic level. People that, and your program is in Wailuku, but your program, I imagine, there are people in different areas that are working in the same way. Have you been in touch with people that are civilians doing this?
Well, so the program is in Wailuku now. That was the pilot program. It's being considered for Lahaina, and my understanding is it's about like 75% funded for Lahaina, so it should be there relatively soon. And now we're talking about doing it in Kahului. The funniest thing is, it wasn't a career move for me at all. Like I said, I was 3 years retired, had no plans on going back to work, didn't want to do any of this. But again, a couple of things near and dear to my heart was kind of coming under attack. And I was like, well, don't blame the mental health professionals, and don't blame, people that are trying to be kind and compassionate to these homeless people for the problem of homelessness, and mental illness and drugs. These people are trying to help. That's what they're set up for. There's other issues for why these things are here. And so, be my big mouth, and next thing you know, I'm back in it again. And, it's starting to expand. I do have a plan. I want to do this probably for another 4 or 5 years. I want to help. I was once a liaison from the police department to the community. Now I see my role as a liaison from the community back to the police. I'd like to mentor another officer to fill kind of that void that I had when I was a police officer, and hopefully I can go riding off into the sunset once again. We'll see what that looks like.
Is your wife ready for you to ride on?
No, she's not. She has to work. She has to work for a few more years. I retired when I was young, so I can see kind of continuing having some sort of like this consultant role. That I think the community still needs somebody there to help them understand a lot of the safety and the policing side of this role. But I think we're a little bit too hands-on. I think that's for one thing. I think the way we're doing things are a little too hands-on, and I really like to see the partnership change a little bit.
Hands-on meaning who you're looking to step up?
Well, I think yeah, we're a little too direct with our approach. With some of the dealing with some of these the mentally ill and the drug addicted people. Oh. In the beginning, I mean, it didn't seem as bad until now. You have cases where people are shooting and stabbing and all that. So it's we don't have any authority. We don't have any firearms. We don't have any weapons. We don't have anything like that. And so it is the role is changing a little bit. But, again, so nor does anybody else. So the rest of the community is they're in the same position that I'm in. So, I think it's necessary. And maybe that's something, I was an officer for so many years, and, you're privileged to so many different things as far as the safety part of it. So maybe now that I feel the sting of what it's like to be on the opposite end, you don't have the firearm, you don't have the authority and the laws. Now you're trying to do it without that. So you maybe that does make me a little bit more keen and a little more sensitive to what has to happen. So, a little awakening, I think.
Now, before the break, we were talking, and you mentioned you're going to go off into another area that we want to talk about. But let's give people, whether they're homeless or whether they're interested in somehow being involved to be able to help, how do they get in touch? So I have my office number. It's 808-250-7126, 808-250-7126. Or you can email me at Ho'omaikai, HOOMAIKAI 44 @gmail.com. I got that one. Okay. Got it. And you're looking for more people to be able to help you. Do you just go out into the community and start meeting people? Is that your approach?
So when we identify an area, so when I first started in Wailuku, the very first thing, and this is something I've done when I was an officer for 25 years, the very first thing I do is I get a map. I get a map from the county, and it's generally the county's TMK, so the tax map key for a place. So if we were talking about Wailuku, I'll get the map of Wailuku. What I want to see is who owns what property. And so every single piece of property, what's county, what state, who owns what piece of property. Then I get an overlay of where all the problem areas are. So we identify where where there's trespassing, where there's drugs and all this stuff, and we put
Is
it
that
all
done with the police? You get access
I get access to that through I got that through the planning department.
I see.
So we can get that through them. And then we do a layover. We see if this is where our problems are. So these are the property owners. If it's private property, generally those are the easiest. Because you can just contact the property owner and see these are the issues on your property. And, if we can use the police to clean it up, or if it's, trespassing, all that kind of stuff, it's pretty simple to do. Once it becomes county or state, then, is it a public park? Is it?
When you move people, do you give them where to go? With truck.
And that's what we had when we, in Wailuku, and again, that was we had mental health Kukua. So that's the asset.
And in Kahului, you're hoping to have some kind of bridge.
We're hoping to have something, but we also, because we don't have something that people can walk up to, well, we can also bring in mental health professionals where we can actually have them on site and help people and take them and move them to certain places, have them go to facilities. So it's a little bit more cumbersome, but we can still do it.
I've seen people in Kihei. I have a friend named Brother Brad. I don't know if you know him. Mm-hmm. Had 28 people living for a while, has a unique way of housing people and got them to be responsible. There are things going on in Kihei. I'd like to see it all coordinated. In fact, Councilman Tasha Kama is going to be meeting with him, knows him for a long time, since he was working with her father, working with homeless. It's funny how these things really, are in people's hearts. He's been doing this for 36 years, trying to help homeless people.
And there are people that can do it. He said they have the personality for it.
They need help. This, why I think of it, is to get programs known by each other and gain a level of support. Maybe we can't handle it in one move, but maybe together we can really get it and get a level of trust to be able to help shift things between areas. Like this guy, I know I'm bringing it up, this guy that he may not be alone, but I don't want to be too, to know the process of what the police does. Well, I got a picture of this guy. I had it out there on Facebook, and I know the guy's name. I can tell you from talking to homeless people where he moves. I try to report. How do we get some awareness as a victim? I was a victim to a crime. I just was crazy. It took like 10, 11 days before a detective was assigned, and I was feeling desperate. So
with our program, then we get a map, we get an overlay, we see where all our issues are. Then we have an educational meeting. So we brought we went door to door. We handed out flyers. We did media. We did social media, and we called everybody in to come in to our meeting.
For the people that have
for that particular area,
not the homeless.
So and if they were there, that was fine too. And it was anybody who was within that area. So if we were going to do Kahului, same thing. We go door to door. We do media releases. We do whatever we could to get the word out, and we'd have people come to attend this meeting. And we start from the very beginning, and we start at the U.S. Constitution. People need to understand that if there was a crime that was committed, that people have the right to have they have the right to face their accuser. So if somebody, couldn't make an anonymous call. You'd have to bear witness against that person. So a lot of times people will make an anonymous call, like let's say that somebody's being disorderly, throwing things around in the middle of the street. They'll call the police and say, hey, there's a guy, he's throwing things around in the middle of the street, blocking up traffic. So of course he's doing that when you call, and the police show up 5 minutes later and he's not doing it anymore. Well, the police can't do anything unless there is an actual witness to that. So you're going to have to come forward and say, I saw it. Because the police can't, they saw him, and even if they saw him, he's sitting on the sidewalk now. He's not actually doing it. So they need to actually witness it, or they need somebody to witness what that offense is. And that's why I say it starts with the U.S. Constitution right there. You have to be able to have somebody say it happened. So anonymous phone calls don't work. So a lot of times people will call and say, yeah, I called the police, they didn't do anything. Well, just that statement alone, a lot of times it's the cancer that just degrades our system, because people, just what they heard, oh, yeah, I called the police, nothing happened. Well, it's not really fair because you have to follow the steps. So in our class, we teach them when you call the police, you have either a 911 call versus a non-emergency call. So, we go through the criteria of what would be an emergency call, what would be a non-emergency call. And if you did call 911, the difference between what they have called enhanced 911, so if you did a drop call where you called 911 and it got cut off, then they would send an officer based on that 911 call. And then they have features like the GPS tracking, you could do texting. They have all these different features in 911. And a lot of times people say, well, I called the police and they're asking me all these questions, just send me a cop. Well, there's a difference between the call taker and the dispatcher. So a lot of times the call taker can be taking the call, but they're typing out that information and the dispatcher's sending the officer. So while they're obtaining all this information, they're actually sending somebody at the same exact time. So I think when people understand how the police work and their protocol, it makes it easier for them to go. It makes them more comfortable. And then once the police are sent and they arrive, that you can't just sit in the back and hope the police are going to do something. You have to step forward and say, yeah, that's the person. I saw him do what he did. Right. You may actually have to go to court. You may have to go and testify. You may, if it was a non-felony, you might have to do a citizen's arrest. If it was a felony, then and the person left or whatever, you might have to do a photo lineup. Like in your case, the detective may be called. He may contact you later. But there's all these things that have to happen. Part of our program is, so once you understand what the protocol is and there's this standard, you now know what the standard is and you can hold officers to that standard.
But you're also, as a citizen, it's nice to know what those procedures are so you don't get even more frustrated when you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, and you know how and why. And and because of the civil rights for the defendant and for you as well, you know what they are. But it also helps that now you can hold them accountable. And if they don't meet the standard, you can complain. You can say, hey, I called, I did everything that they asked, and you didn't meet that standard. But you'll find that if you do it correctly, the officers will meet that challenge. They'll do it the way it's supposed to be done. It's just doing it that way. And if they don't, at least now you can say that, I follow each of these steps. You also find that when you make these calls, a lot of things are all time-stamped. All the phone calls are recorded. They're time-stamped. They know exactly if you called at 10:52 and the officer arrived at 10:55, they're going to know. They're going to know exactly when he came. So part of our classes, and that's what we do. So my program, where we become the consultants now in Wailuku, if somebody calls, and if it's a non-emergency call, well, they have like a trespasser, they may call us and we'll come by and we'll say, okay, call the police. We have all the forms that are necessary forms, the trespass warning forms, the citizen's arrest forms, and we walk the business through each step. So they're not doing it alone, especially for the very first time. A lot of times people get intimidated and say, well, I'm just not going to do it. So you end up having this guy sleeping in your parking lot forever and ever, amen, just because it's easier. He's like, he's all right. We just asked him to clean up after himself because that's easier than having him removed. Because now we actually have somebody that will help you walk him through. And then you have somebody who can actually go up to the guy and say, hey, when's the last time you had somebody eat? Do you know about this service? Do you know about that service? Do you have a case manager? Let's go call your case manager. Have somebody come and work with them. Are the police officers aware of that kind of stuff? They are. And that's that CIT program you talk about. They have their LEADS program.
That's why I'm wondering.
They have all those things. But again, not every single one of them, and not every single time are they going to have the time to go through all of that.
And you mentioned 40 to 50 people short of the staff they need.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, why aren't I seeing them?
Yeah.
But like you say, how many be three
and
places
so
at once?
and he could have 2 or 3 calls stacked, and he's just going to go, hey, you got to go, and that's it. So he's going to be very short because he has to go to 2 or 3 other calls. Some of them may be car accidents, some of them could be more pressing. Sometimes you might just have to leave right in the middle of the call. So that's where we help them get through that. So by the time the police officer comes, it's going to be very short, very brief, because we've done everything else that needs to be done. He's not explaining to you about the trespass form. He's not explaining to you about the citizen's arrest. We've done all of that. You've been through a class that teaches you what to anticipate, what the protocol is, and then now you're having somebody walk you through it.
It would be interesting to tie some of these classes with getting different licenses. Where when you're getting certain things, you have a responsibility to get more information. That would be really powerful.
It would be if somebody else wants to do it, because like I said, I'm trying to retire. It was not a career move for me at all. But it was something, I never invented all this stuff. This is all stuff I did as a police officer. These are all based off of regular laws of, the county, state, statutes and ordinances. None of these are any of these. I don't believe in creating new laws like these sit-lie laws or laws that are directed toward any one particular group, because I think you're going to get in trouble when you do that. You're going to lose those in court. I mean, there's enough laws that pertain to, trespassing, alcohol, drug use, all that kind of stuff. And if they're not violating it, and that's another thing in Wailuku, I think people have learned, if the guy's just sitting there, he's just sitting there. There's nothing you're going to do. Come on. People have that right too.
I mean, the fact also, I don't know how to deal with it, but like this guy in my example, when I went up to homeless, they know him, but they're afraid of him because he also preys on the homeless.
Yeah.
So I'm just hoping that by taking a wall down between us citizens and the police, we can somehow, that's why I said peace officer, feel like we're on the same side, know how the rules are played, know what rules they must play because of the laws.
And you bring up a good point. So, part of it, because we deal with homeless all the time, we kind of just graze over it and get right to the non-compliant homeless. But, when you have people that they hit skid of bad luck, or they lose a job, or they with the kids and all that kind of stuff. If you're motivated to get off the streets, if you comply with and you follow the rules, yes, it does take some time, but you can get off the streets. You can get a home. You can get into. We have programs for those. There are a bunch of different programs, but you have to follow the steps, and you.
And some of them aren't comfortable. You give up different rights that are.
Yeah, I mean, some of these places, you can't smoke in your, you can't smoke in your dwelling, and you can't have a pet or whatever. But if I have to pick my pet over my child, I'll let my cousin hold my pet while I keep my kid in a home.
I appreciate that.
Then when your situation gets better, then you can have your pet back. But the idea is that if you're motivated and you work towards getting off the streets, there are programs. I've said it before. There's a lot of very educated, very smart people, very compassionate, well-meaning people that work with the homeless, that work with these people. I mean, they're tirelessly trying to make this better.
Social workers, everyone seems to be overworked. Too many cases per person.
And if you look at them, I mean, they're trying hard. So a lot of times when we speak, we're focusing on the non-compliant, the chronically homeless, the ones that are, with the chronic drug use, alcohol use, the ones that are stealing, those are the ones that everybody gets focused on. But there are the ones that are, they sleep during the day because they get victimized at night. And those are the ones that we try to work with the most. And those are the ones when I come across, I've had many where I'll see them and I'll talk to them and I'll ask them, hey, when's the last time you something, let me take you down to this place. And they'll be more than willing to come with me. And when they get there, because of HIPAA and those kinds of privacy laws, I never see them again. But they get help. I know they are, because they're not on the streets ever again. They get in there, they get help, they get a place to live. Some of them come back and say, I got some place to go.
Have you run into many older people? I find I'm older, and I find there are a lot of older people that suddenly are faced with the situation of not having enough money to live. There are programs, but there are like 6 and 7 and 8 year waiting lists.
I saw this one gentleman. It was, he had just got released from jail. And speaking of older, and he just got released from jail. And he actually needed a ride back to the jail. He didn't get his money out or something. So he went back, got his money, and then he still didn't have a place. So he took him to mental health kokua. And again, very motivated to get off the streets. They didn't want to be out there. Never saw him again. And generally, when things like that happen, he got a place to go.
Well, never saw him again is good in your work.
It is. Because I know I've had them go in and come right back out, and they'll be on the streets. But, a lot of them, I remember this one woman, small, maybe 4'10", tiny little gal, lived out there. Very feisty, and I knew it was more of a defense mechanism just to keep people away from her.
Yeah.
And, we were constantly on her, kept trying to get her into mental kokua day after day after day. She finally walked in, and, she was there for 2 or 3 days, and then one day she came out and said, she actually thanked us. She said, "Thank you for the tough love, because if it wasn't for that, I'd still be homeless." Some people don't thank us, they're still pissed off because it's more fun for them to be running around and, drinking and being free, but they're not homeless anymore.
If you were to say to the average citizen, here's something that you can do to make the situation better, what would you think?
Be supportive of these initiatives that have to do with helping with the mentally ill. I wouldn't, a lot of people like to give them, hand out money and just give it to them. A lot of them are just going to go back and buy alcohol. I like to say, if somebody is drinking vodka every single day, and that's all they do is drink vodka, and it's basically killing them slower. So if you have a mental illness and you're treating it, self-medicating it with alcohol or vodka, you're killing yourself slowly. And, a lot of them have depression, and, they're basically trying to kill themselves. They know what they're doing, and it's going to kill themselves ultimately.
There are people that have housing that are drinking vodka every day.
But they're doing it slowly, but they're killing themselves. They're not eating, they're not taking care of themselves. They're starting to get sores, and, there's flies and maggots and all this kind of stuff, and people are still giving them money. If you were trying to kill yourself with a gun or a knife or a rope, or you're standing on a building, you'd have a team of negotiators, a SWAT team, everybody trying to give you help. But you do it slowly with a bottle, and people give you money, right? Say, well, here's a couple more bucks. You know what they're going to go and do with it. What we should be doing is supporting mental health professionals and getting these guys the help that they would get had that been a knife or a gun or standing on a tall building. Because ultimately that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to kill it, and they're trying to end this. They're trying to stop this. And that's what they're doing it with a bottle. They're just doing it really slowly.
Well, I know I listen to this subject. I know that the people that are out there that are doing this might say, well, if I had a place to live and I had some kind of gainful work. So I'm hoping that by coming together and being open to seeing someone like yourself or whoever replaces you, that it will create the ground where the services and things that are available, almost like all the services available, so they can make a big giant step toward getting their lives together.
Yeah. We're looking at that old Safeway there in Calgary. I understand Ross is going to move on, but that old building there, turning that into a resource center, like a one-stop shop where they can come in, they can get everything from a haircut to seeing a doctor to getting mental health treatment to getting housing, and even having some bed space, showers, food, all that under one roof. And if you could get something like that. And so the average person, I think, could help when you see that kind of initiative or that kind of a program coming, support that. I think that's one of the key things that you need. One, because now people have a place to go. You have a place to send them. And two, now the police have to move somebody on, they say, well, that's your option. You go there, or you go to jail.
Right.
This is
it's
your choice.
nice to have an option.
Yeah,
An
yeah.
option that-
And then, but those are the two viable options. There's no staying there, staying out in, in somebody's front on their sidewalk or in front of a store, urinating, defecating, is not an option. You have to go get treatment. You have to go, it's just not an option. But we have to have something for them to go to.
When you were a police officer, were you as friendly and warm as you are now? You seem like,
It really depends. Most officers are, depending on the situation. It really depended on the situation. But, any of my calls, regardless if it was a traffic stop or you were holding a knife or a gun, I always try to diffuse it by my approach. Always try to diffuse it, even if it was like, whoa, how's it? Even looking at a gun or a knife. Because if you could talk your way out of it, that was going to be the best approach. But, I've had a pretty colorful career. I had all kinds of assignments but
you've been at a full spectrum of police work. So where I think of it as a reaction to some of the other things that you're involved in, to recognize the need for what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think most police officers are. I think a lot of people tend to be a little bit more defensive. My wife says I've relaxed quite a bit since I retired. But I think it's, even when I was an officer, it really is. It's about communicating.
It is that.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be cutting it short because communicating is coming to an end.
Right.
We have been here. It's amazing. We've been here an hour. Lawrence Kauha'a'a
Awesome.
is here with me, and you'll see ways to get in touch with him. Thank you for being part of our show and part of the good work that you're doing to make this a better Maui. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next week. Not next week is a vacation, so you'll watch a repeat. But after that, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you. Check out Maui Neutral Zone. Watch this one again. Watch some of our other shows. Aloha.
Aloha. See you guys. Take care.